How many decisions do you think you make in a day? Probably hundreds. But here's the uncomfortable question. How many of those decisions were actually yours? Because sometimes, the most important decisions we make aren't entirely our own. You've probably seen this hundreds of times. An episode ends, a countdown appears, 5, 4, 3, and before you've even had a chance to think, the next episode starts playing. It feels so normal that most of us don't question it anymore. After all, it's just a convenience feature, right? But here's something interesting. Back in 2014, when Netflix first introduced this feature, called AutoPlay, people absolutely hated it. Users complained that it was intrusive. Some even joked that Netflix had declared war on sleep. For nearly 6 years, there wasn't even an option to turn it off. Yet despite the criticism, Netflix kept it. Why? Was the company simply ignoring its users? Or did it know something about human behavior that most of us didn't? Because if you think about it, AutoPlay isn't just a design choice. It's a decision that changed how millions of people consume entertainment today. And once you start looking closely, you'll notice the same pattern everywhere. So today, let's explore what if those 5 seconds between 2 episodes were never majorly about convenience. What if they were carefully designed to influence one of the most important decisions you'll make on the platform, whether to stay or leave? So let's look at this from Netflix's perspective. Imagine you're sitting in a product meeting at Netflix. One team tells you that users are complaining about AutoPlay. Another team tells you that the feature is significantly improving engagement and watch time. What do you do? If you're running a company that serves hundreds of millions of users, you don't make product decisions based only on who complains the loudest. You make them based on whether the feature helps achieve your business objectives. And that's where this story gets interesting. Because AutoPlay wasn't introduced in isolation. It was solving a business problem. So before we can understand why AutoPlay worked, we first need to understand what Netflix was trying to optimize in the first place. Was the goal simply to make watching more convenient? Or was convenience just a means to achieve something much bigger? To answer that, we need to step away from the product for a moment and understand one thing that drives every decision a business makes: its business model. At first glance, the answer seems obvious. Netflix streams movies and TV shows. But that's not really what it sells. Netflix sells subscriptions. And that small distinction changes everything. Unlike traditional television, Netflix doesn't earn money every time you watch another episode. In fact, whether you watch 1 episode a week or 5 episodes in a single evening, your monthly subscription fee stays exactly the same. So if watching more doesn't directly generate more revenue, why would Netflix care about increasing watch time? Because for a subscription business, the biggest threat isn't that you stop watching for the night. The biggest threat is that you stop watching and stop paying altogether. Every month, Netflix faces the same challenge. How do we convince millions of subscribers that this platform is valuable enough to keep paying for? That's where engagement becomes incredibly important. The more people use Netflix, the more value they perceive from their subscription. And the more value they perceive, the less likely they are to cancel. In other words, engagement isn't the goal. It's the mechanism that helps drive retention. And retention is one of the most important drivers of a subscription business. This is exactly why companies like Netflix obsess over metrics such as viewing hours, session length, return frequency, and subscriber retention. They're not vanity metrics. They're indicators of whether customers are continuing to find value in the platform. And according to Netflix's own product experimentation, AutoPlay performed exceptionally well. When the company tested different product features, AutoPlay consistently increased viewing engagement, making it a strong candidate for a wider rollout. From a business perspective, the decision starts making sense. If one relatively small design change encourages millions of people to spend more time on the platform, and higher engagement contributes to stronger retention, then AutoPlay isn't just a user interface feature, it's a business strategy. But this still leaves us with one important question. How can something as simple as a 5-second countdown change the behavior of millions of people? To answer that, we need to leave the world of business strategy and enter the world of human psychology. So far, we've looked at AutoPlay from Netflix's perspective. Now let's look at it from ours. Because here's the fascinating part. Netflix never forces anyone to watch another episode. There are no pop-ups saying, "You must continue watching." There are no penalties for leaving. You remain completely free to stop. So why do millions of people continue anyway? The answer lies in something behavioral scientists call choice architecture. Choice architecture explains that every decision we make is influenced not just by the options available to us, but by how those options are presented. Imagine two versions of Netflix. In the first version, an episode ends, the credits roll, you return to the episode menu. Now you have to make a conscious decision. Should I watch another episode, or should I stop? In the second version, the episode ends, a 5-second countdown appears, and the next episode begins automatically. Notice something. The choices haven't changed. You can still stop watching whenever you want. But the environment in which that decision is made has completely changed. In one version, stopping might become the natural outcome. In the other, continuing becomes the default. And that's the essence of choice architecture. It isn't about taking choices away. It's about designing the environment in which those choices are made. Netflix didn't change our intentions. It changed the path of least resistance. Now let's build on that idea. Every decision contains friction. Sometimes that friction is physical. Sometimes it's mental. Think about the old way of watching television. An episode ended, you picked up the remote, selected the next episode, pressed play. None of those actions were difficult, but together, they created a pause, a small interruption. And interruptions matter, because every interruption creates an opportunity to reconsider. Maybe I should go to sleep. Maybe I'll finish this tomorrow. Maybe I've watched enough for today. AutoPlay quietly removes that interruption. Not because clicking a button is hard, but because every additional decision creates another opportunity to leave. Instead of asking, "Would you like to continue?" Netflix simply assumes you probably will. And unless you actively interrupt that process, the next episode begins. Now imagine repeating that experience not once, but hundreds of times, over weeks, months, even years. Gradually, something interesting begins to happen. Watching Netflix no longer feels like a series of individual decisions. It starts feeling like one continuous experience. Episode follows episode, without interruption, without resetting your attention, without asking you to consciously begin again. This is how habits are often built, not through dramatic changes, but through small behaviors repeated consistently over time. AutoPlay doesn't create the desire to watch. It simply makes acting on that desire increasingly effortless. Eventually, continuing feels normal. Stopping becomes the interruption. And perhaps that's the most interesting part of all. We often think our biggest decisions shape our behavior, but many times, it's the tiny ones. Should I click? Should I continue? Should I stop? Every one of those moments gives us an opportunity to change course. AutoPlay quietly removes many of those moments. Instead of making one decision after every episode, You make one decision only when you consciously decide to interrupt the flow. That's a subtle difference, but it's a powerful one. Recent academic research found exactly this. When participants disabled Netflix's AutoPlay feature, they watched for significantly less time and their viewing sessions became noticeably shorter. Not because the shows became less interesting, but because more decision points had been reintroduced into the experience. So perhaps Netflix's biggest innovation wasn't AutoPlay itself. It was recognizing that changing behavior doesn't always require changing people. Sometimes, all it takes is changing the environment in which people make decisions. So, in essence, Netflix redesigned the viewing experience. It reduced friction. It changed the default. It made continuous watching feel more natural. But there's one important question left. Did it actually work? The answer appears to be yes. A recent academic study asked a simple question. What happens if AutoPlay is removed? Participants disabled Netflix's AutoPlay feature and continued using the platform as usual. The result was surprisingly clear. People watched for significantly less time. Their viewing sessions became noticeably shorter. Nothing about the content had changed. The shows were exactly the same. The only thing that changed was the environment in which viewers made their decisions. That makes this story much bigger than Netflix because it demonstrates something fundamental about human behavior. Small changes in design can lead to surprisingly large changes in behavior. Interestingly, Netflix eventually acknowledged that not everyone enjoyed AutoPlay. After years of user feedback, the company introduced the option to disable both AutoPlay previews and automatic episode playback in 2020. At first glance, that might seem like a reversal, but it really wasn't. Netflix didn't remove AutoPlay. It simply gave users a choice. And what's fascinating is that many people never turned it off. For millions of users, AutoPlay had already become the normal way of watching Netflix. The behavior had become familiar, not because viewers consciously chose it every time, but because the product had quietly trained them to expect it. And perhaps that's the most interesting part of this entire story. Netflix isn't unique. Once you recognize this pattern, you begin seeing it everywhere. Open Spotify, play a song, and after your playlist ends, another song starts playing. Finish a YouTube video, and the next one is already queued. Scroll through Instagram, and another reel appears before you've even thought about stopping. Different companies, different products, different industries. Yet they're all solving the same problem. Not by changing what people want, but by changing how decisions are made. That's because modern digital products have realized something incredibly powerful. Human behavior isn't shaped only by motivation. It's also shaped by the environment around us. Sometimes we think we're making a completely conscious decision, but often the design of the product has already influenced which option feels easiest, most natural, or requires the least effort. And that's exactly what Netflix's AutoPlay did. It didn't force anyone to watch another episode. It simply redesigned the moment between two episodes. The moment where we usually pause, reflect, and decide whether to continue. Now, does that mean AutoPlay is unethical? Not necessarily. In fact, that's what makes this conversation so interesting. From one perspective, AutoPlay genuinely improves the viewing experience. You don't have to reach for the remote every 20 minutes. The experience feels smoother, more seamless, more enjoyable. But from another perspective, that same convenience also happens to benefit Netflix's business. The less friction there is, the longer people stay engaged. So where do we draw the line? When does good product design become behavioral engineering? There isn't a simple answer, and perhaps there shouldn't be, because the same psychological principles that help us navigate a product effortlessly can also be used to keep us engaged for longer than we intended. Understanding that distinction isn't about becoming suspicious of every company. It's about becoming more aware of how the products around us are designed. Because once you understand why these decisions are made, You stop seeing them as random design choices. You start seeing them as strategic decisions rooted in an understanding of human behavior. And that's the biggest takeaway from today. The companies that shape our everyday lives don't just build products. They build experiences around how humans think, decide, and behave. And once you start noticing that, you'll never look at everyday products the same way again. That's all for today's thought experiment. If this analysis gave you a new way of thinking, consider subscribing for more explorations into business, behavior, and psychology. Until next time, stay curious.